Sure, just went into an existential crisis. So I do outpatient stuff. I do some of the PHP groups. I do the evening IOP stuff. So if you want more torture, come to evening IOP or PHP. So my lecture tonight is going to be kind of touching upon several different things. I'll try to wrap them up in one. I'm new to this whole microphone thing. So if you see me holding this awkwardly, it's because I'm getting used to it. See, now I have this irrelevant fear. Now I'm just going to rush out of here and not turn it off and accidentally go to the bathroom. Then you're going to get to know me more personally. So just by show of hands, I just want to get a good picture. How many of you are you in 2 weeks in? 2 weeks in. Holy moly. How many of you are about to leave soon? So some people about to leave. So where I'm going to come from is the perspective of what can really happen to a person's brain, essentially, within the first 30 days of recovery, sometimes more. Has anybody ever heard of the term the mental fog? Has anybody heard of that before? How would anybody have any best ways to describe that? The mental fog. Anybody? Like, have you ever just kind of like lost touch with like, oh, today is Tuesday? Like you just kind of feel like every day is the same. The reason why I want to talk about that so much is because if you might have been through it in here if you're about to leave, but if you're in your first few weeks, this is something to be aware of. Some people come into the Ridge with a lot of, they're having like one of the worst moments of their life, right? They're big into alcohol, they're deep into drugs or whatever, and a person's psychology and a person's ability to think is completely altered by that. And the best way to explain that is as you're getting sober and as you're at the Ridge, maybe some of you did detox here, I don't know. There's this mental fog where you're just kind of existing, right? You're just kind of taking it day by day. You're trying to remember people's names. You're trying to memorize who RSS is which and which one pissed you off and all that type of stuff. So the thing I always try to equate it to is it's like an hourglass. And let me explain. I'm not the greatest drawer in the world. I slept through art class and skipped it several times in my school career. But I'm going to do my best. This is how I try to equate it. So you want to think of an hourglass, how we kind of process things, okay? So of the top portion, you have the short term. So this is immediate stuff now, the stuff in the here and now, okay? It's the stuff that happens to you daily, the stuff that's happened to you recently. Then this little narrow part here is like what I like to call the processing center. And then here in the bottom, it's long term. This is the ability, this is how we kind of learn things, right? We learn about something, we process it and understand it, and we put it into long term. So we go through an experience, we have it in the short term, we digest it, we understand it, we learn from it, and now that becomes a long-term memory or core value or foundation. In active use, what happens is that this processing center is almost blocked off, which means that there's a lot of people who kind of block this off, but life still happens whether you're sober or not. So life still keeps moving. So what ends up happening is you got all this stuff that you haven't processed or dealt with, right? And it starts to overflow, and now it's starting to get pretty out there, all right? Then you make the brave decision to go get help and get sober. Well, guess what happens once the drugs and alcohol get out of your body? This is open for business. And then all of a sudden, people in residential have something called memory flood, where all of a sudden the memories come back and they're intense. You might have forgot about stuff that you did in active use, right? You'll be sitting there one day reading a book or watching TV, and all of a sudden you just think about, why did I text that person at 2 in the morning? Why did I do that? Why is that coming to me right now? That happened so long ago. It's because your memory is now coming back online. Okay? And this process can be overwhelming for some. This process can be scary. because all of a sudden, all these memories come in, emotions come into play. Sometimes people talk about feeling uncomfortable, having even can develop triggers and urges out of this. But this is why people come to residential, is to start the process of digesting it, learning it, processing it, and moving on, okay? But the problem is, we only have you guys for about 30, 45 days or whatever. You're gonna be leaving here with stuff still to process, okay? And does anybody feel like they've been here before? Anybody raise their hands if you've been here before? Or all of a sudden it's like, bam, it just hits. So that's something to be very cognizant of moving forward. And loved ones in the room, what I try to encourage you to be mindful of is that I think it's natural for you to want to know things and kind of get, digest it yourself or get some understanding and clarity. But if you sometimes ask your loved one, hey, do you remember when you did this or said this or whatever, it might be a legitimate thing where they say, I don't remember. Because that's the effect that alcohol and drugs have on the brain. It kind of creates this haze, okay? So by the time you leave, there's still a lot of work to do. That's why we offer ongoing therapy, outpatient programs. That's why we encourage you to try continued AA and all that type of stuff, because there's still a lot to process here. It can be overwhelming, but it's normal, okay? So that's kind of what people are going through in residential. Does memory come back? Absolutely. It mellows out over time, but it is very, very overwhelming at first, okay? But there's another side to this puzzle that happens, and that may not apply to everybody in this room, but one of the things that people come in the door with, majority of the people who come here do assessments also have susceptibilities to trauma, okay? Now, when you put trauma on top of this effect, sometimes people in residential will report having nightmares or flashbacks, okay? Things that are related to trauma events, okay? And when you put this on top of everything going on there, people could have different responses to trauma. There's several different responses. I'll hit upon some of the normal ones that I've seen the most in my practice. When people get overwhelmed by trauma, people can go into fight or flight, right? Everybody know what that is? You're either going to fight something, run away from something. But there's other ones. There's a couple more. Anybody know the other ones? Freeze. Freeze is another one. They feel kind of paralyzed. They don't know what to do, right? And what was the other one? Fawn. What's fawning? Anybody heard of that one? Fawning it's kind of like a people-pleasing thing. So this happens, this can happen in the sense of, let's say there's conflict in the room. Like, let's say for whatever reason you two just started fighting each other, and I'm just sitting here like, oh, right? My trauma response might be like, let's get this squashed away. Let's do some people pleasing to get the tension out of the room, because I don't like tension, right? So those are ways that we can respond. So if all of a sudden I'm sitting in treatment in residential and I got trauma stuff on top of this, all of a sudden anxiety goes out the window. I feel I want to isolate from people, or I feel tension in the room. I'm super sensitive to tension in the room or conflict, or I kind of feel more lost. That could be related to the trauma response or the nightmares, flashbacks, or whatever is occurring. So I try to tell people up at the house, if you feel this way, you're not going crazy. This is completely and utterly normal, okay? Some other things that happen some other things that are kind of trauma responses, but we don't think about it. And maybe this is impacting things at home or in your personal lives. There can be another response I see in outpatient the most. It's called hyper-independence. Anybody know what I mean by that? Hyper-independence is this sense of people like to do things how they want to. They want to do things, they want to take care of stuff around the house, they want to organize things because they are going to do it how they want to, because they feel the need to have it where they want to, right? Well, that's great because you're independent, you're getting stuff done, you're productive, but the problem with that is there can be this kind of side effect of, I can be angry that no one gives me help, right? And sometimes family members or relationships can have issues there because there's a sense of, I want to help the person, but they won't let me. Now I can struggle with incompetency. What can I do to help this person, right? So hyper-independence is another reaction we start to see, especially in the outpatient part. The other one is a lot of tendency towards isolation, right? If you've been through isolation, you know what that's like. You don't want to deal with people, you want to get away from people, you make excuses not to go to events or whatever the case might be, okay? So those are just other responses to having some of these memories come flooding back, okay? One of the things I also find interesting about these responses is that certain people, not all, can have what we call dissociative effects, okay? Dissociative effects can be almost kind of like an out-of-body experience, right? So for example, I'll give you an example that from the study that I read about a person that witnessed an accident, right? Witnessed like a car crash while they were walking on the road. The event was so scary to them that they kind of felt like their memory of it is not in their own body, but just kind of outside of themselves witnessing that. That's a dissociation effect. So sometimes when people are going through trauma responses, they almost kind of like need a nudge to kind of bring them back to reality. They kind of just sit there and just kind of, the lights are on, but no one's home, right? It's another common response. Another common response that we see is that people will do what we call self-induced dissociation. Well, what does that sound like? Using drugs and alcohol. It creates that dissociation from memories, pain, or whatever, and therefore, that's why people struggle so much in early recovery, because their number one coping skill is no longer helping them, and now they're trying to get sober. So there's got to be some sort of follow-through on a trauma response plan, whether that's continued therapy or whatever the case might be. For me, what I try to get across in my practice is the first thing we have to do, if you relate to this topic, is establishment of safety. The number one thing I can encourage you all, everybody in this room, is to make sure your environment, your home, is safe. And that includes with substances, right? I can't guarantee you'll never be exposed to alcohol. That would be a lie, to be honest with you. Because alcohol is everywhere. It's just everywhere, right? It's at gas stations, grocery stores, restaurants, everywhere, right? But the one place on planet Earth that you can pretty much make safe is your own home. So just be mindful of that for friends or family or whoever is here, are you helping them with that process, right? Some people talk about, like some family members will ask me after a lecture, I'm just gonna do it here to make you all embarrassed. It's like, well, can I still drink around them? And I can't answer that. Your loved one has to answer that. I've dealt with some people in outpatient that were like, it's cool, man, it's whatever. It's my problem, I gotta deal with it. But there's some that will vocalize and say, I don't want that, okay? So if you have that question, as much as I would love to answer that question for you, I'm not your loved one. And I think it's important to have that dialogue before you go home of, what are the rules if anybody in the house drinks, right? What are the rules around that? What are the boundaries around that, okay? The other thing too to be aware of, and this might not apply to everybody in this room, please be mindful that people get really good at hiding stuff. Is anybody a good hider in here? Right? Check everywhere. Upper closet, ventilation system, I'm telling you. Because the reason why, we're joking about it, but I want you to be mindful. Sometimes you don't remember. So what happens if you're doing some spring cleaning, you remove the tote off the top shelf, and it falls and smacks you in the leg. Holy crap, instant trigger right there. So you have to be very careful. Is the alcohol out of the home? Did you check all the hiding spots? Did you check in the garage with behind the removable wall? All that type of stuff. Did you check in the trunk of the car? You think I'm joking, right? So again, safety has to be established. Is my home safe? Another thing I found interesting, and I didn't understand this until later in my career, some people, as a trauma, maybe a trauma response, or maybe they're just have other things going on, cannot have a cluttered home. Anybody relate to that? Some people put their hands up, ooh, me, right? Clutter in the home is overstimulating, right? And one of the things that people like to do and to feel in control is cope with it by doing some very aggressive cleaning, right? So if anybody's been like, hey, I'm gonna go help mom clean, good luck, because chances are they already got it established, right? And that's part of that hyper-independence I talked about earlier, right? So things to keep in mind: establishment and safety. Is your home safe? Is it away from drugs and alcohol? Is your home as less chaotic as it can be, right? But family members, I want to point something out to you, right? And I'm speaking from an outpatient perspective, because loved ones will come to me and they'll talk about this in groups. They talk about you in groups, right? And what they do is they talk about, like, some of my family feels like they're on edge around me. Well, yeah, because here's the thing. And I don't want to go into diagnosing. I don't want to get into that. What I just want to say is, if you witness a loved one struggle with drugs and alcohol issue, chances are it probably wasn't a pleasant experience. So you have to be careful when your loved one comes home and you feel tension about them coming home. That's normal, because the last time they were home, maybe before they left the Ridge, maybe it wasn't a pleasant experience. And that hypersensitivity can come out as anxiety, anger, control, right? So, people will come in my group and they will talk about, yeah, I was like 5 minutes late from walking in to how I normally walk into work. I get home at 6 o'clock, 6:05, and I came in the door at 6:10, and all of a sudden the family member was like, what's going on, right? But see, it's a slippery slope, because I'm going to ask the clients in the room, and I want you to be honest with me, okay? Please vocalize it here in a safe environment, unless somebody starts throwing chairs. If your family member walked up to you and asked you, are you drinking? How are you going to react to that? Defensive. Come on, say it. Come on, speak your piece. Pissed. I love that. Put some emotion into it, right? Because someone's been here before, right? You've been through it. Yeah, you know what it's like. It sucks. But it's so true, and I appreciate you vocalizing it, because it's different from when I ask you, hey, what's going on? It's a different response, because I'm a third party, right? Versus a loved one's perspective, where it's so immediate and emotional. It's more personal, right? So, but at the same time, it's also important to be fair to the family. What are they seeing on their end to cause their anxiety and to react that way? Are they seeing patterns? Are they worried? And I think that's where it's important to have these discussions in your family sessions, or if you continue with family therapy outside of here, whatever the case might be, because at the end of the day, in order to have a sustainable life in sobriety, there has to be a level of trust. There has to be a level of trust. And I'm not saying that trust is going to come back tomorrow. I'm not saying that trust is going to come back this month. I'm just saying there has to be some sort of continued progression with the idea that, yeah, there is moments where I feel this way and that way, but can we have an open discussion about it, right? So that's just another thing about keeping the home safe. Another thing with the loved ones I also like to point out to you is, are you doing enough in your personal lives to take care of yourself? Because unfortunately, I'm just going to be honest, we do a lot of work with the clients, and we do these family lectures and stuff, and we do the family sessions, and that's great. But sometimes the family members don't really get some of that care that deserves. So are you attending Al-Anon? Is anybody attending Al-Anon in here? Anybody? Helpful? Yeah? Al-Anon's the support group for the people who struggle with alcohol, the loved ones who struggle with alcohol. Nar-Anon is for the NA side, right? Smart Recovery has their own family meetings as well. So, and if you need to, if it's to the point to where you have your own anxieties, are you talking to a counselor about that? your own therapist about it. You can get a therapist that has addiction criteria or addiction training and certification, because they're going to have that knowledge, right? Some LPCs, licensed professional counselors, some of them might have some sort of addiction and training and some training here, but some of them might, they might prioritize more of this instead of that. So I think it's important to look for what we call LCDC 2 or 3 or LICDC. These are just lovely letters I'm throwing at you. But that's addiction-specific credentialing, right? Because if anybody's going to get it, it's that counselor or who has training in that, because for the loved ones, it is kind of anxiety-producing. And if you're in here, and your loved one's about to leave, and as the days approach, you feel kind of like more tension, completely normal, okay? That's just your alert system saying, they're coming home, how is this going to roll, okay? Family, any other kind of perspectives to throw out there before I continue moving on for the families? No? Clients, anything to add to that? Okay. So, does this make sense, how the brain can be overwhelmed and flooded with memories? The other thing I want to throw out there for the kind of getting things back in order, part of this process that happens is when people start to feel the flood and the mental fog lift. It's not uncommon for people to go right towards feelings of guilt, shame, and remorse, okay? And see, that's the unfortunate part, right? Family members can have this perspective of they don't care, they don't listen, blah, 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 right? And I get that, right? But I'm going to tell you something, and you can take this to the bank. There is nothing that you can say to a person with addiction issues that they haven't said to themselves, okay? So that guilt, shame, remorse could happen from this process. And it's natural for you to have this urge or this thing of like, man, I really want to apologize and make amends right away. And that's great, that's great, and that's wonderful, right? But the thing is, you have to be very, very cautious of this, is if you go home and say, hey, I'm sorry for blah, 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 my intention is not to do that again, or whatever the case might be, have they heard that before? And I'm just being honest, have they heard that before? So what is the thing to do? What's the thing to do? If I want to show everybody I'm getting better, what's the thing I can do? Actions, right? What actions are you doing? Are you going to meetings, right? Are you going to meetings? Are you going to IOP or whatever the case might be? So please, as much as you have this urge to make amends and smooth everything over right away because you're just feeling it, right? You have to understand people are looking at your actions rather than your words right now, okay? So just something to throw out there. Does that make sense? Any other comments or questions about that? No, okay. All right, another thing related to this, please keep in mind that you can still be susceptible to post-acute withdrawal. Anybody know what that is? Post-acute withdrawal is the symptoms a person can experience after they stop, after they quit drugs and alcohol. Anybody know how long it can last up to? 2 years, right? And what does that entail? Mood swings, trouble sleeping, trouble concentrating, memory stuff. So sometimes family members will comment, they'll be like, man, they seem pretty moody. I wonder if they're okay. And it's okay for you to worry, but sometimes it could be just post-acute withdrawal, right? Insomnia is another common thing we run into where, it's like I try to go to sleep, I sleep 2 hours, I wake up and I'm just wide awake, right? And it's natural for family members to see that and kind of go, are they okay? That's part of the process too, okay? Any other comments on post-acute withdrawal? Does it suck? Yeah, it sucks. My heart goes out to the people at the house who, it sucks because it's like one day you're fine, then the next day it's like every little thing is irritating the crap out of me, right? It's like, it's like when the RSS comes in with the flashlight and makes sure you're asleep and you're just like, I just want to react with rage and anger right now. Well, that could be some of the mood swings, right? So I realize I am crapping on the RSS. I appreciate the RSS is in here. I'm saying that for my safety too. So yeah. Just other things to throw out there. And again, I love being an outpatient because it gives me a different perspective. You know, some of the things I obviously hear people talk about, and I'm just going to say this out there, and I'm just going to be blunt with this. Loved ones in the room, please do not be your loved one's sponsor. The people in this room who are laughing are probably the clients. But you know, it's like, you know, I've been through sessions before where we start the session at 6, and you know, a client comes in, you know, hell on wheels, and they're just like, I'm tired of my so-and-so, insert whoever, of asking me, am I going to a meeting? Am I doing this? Am I doing that? Or they'll be like, hey, you going to a meeting tomorrow? Because one thing that's important to recognize, and this is hard, is that recovery is your loved one's, is their program, right? Is their program. Which means that, you know, it's okay to ask questions and encourage them, but to have that kind of like, I guess, helicopterness or that helicopter kind of response, all that's going to do is freak the people in recovery out, and they're going to like want to distance themselves from you. The intention is nice and pure, but sometimes when that pressure to do this and do that comes over, people react to pressure differently. Some people are really good at self-sabotaging in here. Sometimes stress and pressure create self-sabotaging behaviors. So I just want to throw that out there. You know, it is also no question, you know, some people have been Al-Anon here. What are the steps like in Al-Anon? Anybody know? Have you read the 12 steps of Al-Anon? They're the exact same as AA. Well, wait a minute, how is that possible? How are the exact same steps in AA found in Al-Anon? Well, the reality is, in step 1 is the most important one. Step 1 is about accepting that you as a family member were powerless over your loved one's alcohol or addiction issues, and that your love for them could not cure them. That's it. That's hard to accept. That's because I don't care who it is, every loved one, every parent, or whatever, wants to believe that the love they have for their family member who's suffering from addiction is enough to push them in that right direction, right? So my heart goes out to you, but at the same time, that's a hard step to accept, because you're kind of reaching that same conclusion as your loved one in AA. You're powerless over it, right? You know, and I've had people talk about, like, in groups before, you know, the family members want to do and I have no problem with it. It's just, I don't know, this is just me. You know, some people do the Life 360 app. You ever heard of that before? It's like a way to kind of keep track of, you know, some people get the apps where you can, well, let me see what breathalyzer they blew today, you know, all that type of stuff. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that accountability, but I'm just going to be honest with you. Honest with you. If a person really, 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 really wanted to jerk or use, what are they going to do? They're going to do it. And there's not enough, and as the family members who intervene and all that, now you don't want to enable, right? You know, you just don't want to be like, yeah, take the car, take the money or whatever. That's one thing. But remember, they place the tracking devices on the passenger front tire. Words to the wise, okay? I know, it's called, I know. But it's like, I see a lot of work to contain or control them, but again, step 1, you can't control it. You can't put, that love for them is not enough to cure their disease. That's just not. So family members I give you a lot of praise for your patience in here. And if one of you are still kind of frustrated or upset about stuff in the past, that's normal. That's where a lot of family therapy comes in. But we have to be very mindful of the fact that they too are sensitive, and it's great to have this response of, let's talk about everything, right? Another, I don't know, I haven't seen this, I haven't done family lecture in a while, which is probably a good thing for everybody's sanity. But sometimes in family lectures, I'll see stuff that happens. Like I'll see a family here, right? And the addict's right here, the mom's right here. And then like we'll talk about something, and they'll look at the board and go, hey, don't you remember when you did that? Oh boy, What's going on when you're reminded, clients of the room, of something right then and there, of something they did? What happens? Instant shame and regret. Now, for the loved ones in the room, you're trying to express like, hey, I relate to that. But on the other side, there's this kind of, oh no, I feel guilty now. Now I feel this urge to make amends right away. Now I feel this urge to whatever. So, and sometimes people don't realize they're doing it. Sometimes they're just kind of like, hey, don't you remember this or don't you remember that? Because they're trying to process, Family members don't get a lot of time to process what they just went through. So that's another thing. So that's another divide that can happen, okay? And I guess my last thing to that point is understand that your loved one might have to unexpectedly have to go to a meeting right away. It just happens. People have bad days. People in recovery are allowed to have bad days. They're allowed to have days where they're just not feeling it, right? They're allowed to have days where they didn't sleep well last night because of post-acute withdrawal or whatever the case might be. They go to work, their boss sucks, work sucked, and they just come home and they're like, I really need a meeting right now. And family members, are you okay with the fact that sometimes they need to walk out the door as soon as they get home from work? And that could bring a little bit of like confusion of like, wait a minute, I thought tonight was our dinner or tonight was this. There has to be a communication plan in place of, hey, when I say I need a meeting, okay? And it's not that they don't love you, it's not they don't care about family dinner or whatever, it's just for them to say, I need a meeting right now, is an indication that they need to be somewhere safe to listen to recovery-related things to move on with that day, okay? It's just something that's another conflict we have because, people come in and it's like, well, I left for a meeting, but they were kind of disgruntled. Yeah, I get that. They're allowed to be. But where's that communication of telling them right now up in front that, hey, if this happens, please understand, I might need to go. Okay? Does anybody else got any comments or questions about that or reflections on that? Make sense? Yes, in the back.
What about holidays?
What about them? They don't exist.
Yes, they do.
Well, I'll tell you what, we actually just had a conversation about this in IOP last night, ironically, because what's the next holiday? Which is next week. Yeah, 4th of July's up. People ask like, and this is where clients, you have to be honest with yourselves. You have to vocalize your needs. If you're going to go to Aunt Susie's house, sorry if your name is Susie in here, if you're going to go to Aunt Susie's house and she wants to light off fireworks, but she also drinks tequila, and you feel like, damn, that's going to be a high-risk environment. I don't know if I'm ready for that. Are you vocalizing that to your loved one that I don't feel comfortable nor safe, especially because some of you are about to leave the Ridge, and it's like, is it really smart for me to go from a recovery-safe environment right towards a holiday event or dinner or whatever the case might be where there's going to be high exposure? You have to self-assess and be honest with yourself, right? Now, there's tricks you can do if you really want to go, drive separately. That helps. Drive separately, because if you get overwhelmed, you can just go to a meeting and say at least you attended or tried. If you don't want to go, that's great. Vocalize your needs, because I don't know if anybody told you this, but there's a July 4th next year. There's a July 4th after that one. There's a July 4th 2 coming around the corner, right? The sequel. But it's important to recognize, and I get it, because people can feel this overwhelming sense of, damn, I really missed out on the last few years. I really want to be present in my family's lives, but what if I'm going to so-and-so's house for 4th of July and it's a high-risk environment? You have to self-assess and ask yourself, does this make sense and is this safe for me to do? Okay? So yeah, holidays are a big one. I just had a person recently go to like a family gathering or whatever, had to drive separately, and had to leave at a certain time because it was just too overwhelming, but went to a meeting and everything's fine. So you could attempt to go, but have a safety plan in place in case, right? So yes, holidays. I hate holidays personally, so because everybody, it's stressful. It's stressful, right? So yeah. Any other questions in the room or reflections? from either the family member's perspective or the client's perspective. Speak now, forever hold your peace. Let it out here. Okay, last thing, and I'll leave you with this. How many of you in here are married or in a relationship? Raise them high for me. Okay, wow, overwhelming, okay? Okay, I'm going to give you some advice and give you some encouragement. If you in this room are married or in a relationship and you want to start to repair that process, it's going to sound weird for me to say, and please don't misconstrue this. Date again. Date your partner again. Date your partner, okay? Go out and try things again. Because you're kind of not a new person, but you have a different lifestyle now, right? I always get that one person who makes a joke, oh, they're telling me I should just go out and date other people. I'm like, no, I'm not doing it. I don't condone that. Trust me, I don't want no weird text messages coming in to come through. But yes, like, I feel what I've seen work for people in outpatient is they dedicate one time a week on a Friday or throughout the week where it's just them going out to dinner or doing something and reconnecting, okay? And I think I understand that's not always possible because work, kids, and life and all that, but I feel like there has to be some sort of personal one-on-one time to where, how's it going? How are we doing? Where are you at right now? Can we enjoy this moment together, right? Reconnection, okay? So I just want to throw that out there as some sort of last piece of encouragement. Anything else? All right, so for the families in the room, appreciate your patience going through this process. Again, please, I highly encourage Al-Anon or your own personal counseling. Clients in the room, what's your plan for after here? Are you going to IOP? Are you going to PHP? Are you going to aftercare? You continue on with individual therapy because all this is still going to need processed to some degree. So are you taking care of yourself? So that's my message to you. If you have nothing else, I appreciate the time.
Thanks, Gavin.